In this video, I'm going to show you how I painted the Namarti Thralls for Idoneth Deepkin for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. These guys. We're starting right now. What's going on, guys? Jared here from Mini Junkie. Welcome to another tutorial video. In this video, like I said, I'm going to be painting the Namarti Thralls, which are your battle line units for the Idoneth Deepkin. Just riffing off these words, these names now. These are a lot of work. It took me probably over a week to film the tutorial itself, and that's painting an hour or two a day. There's just a lot of fiddly detail on them, and in particular that sort of filigree pattern that they have on their lower robes. When it's hard to get your brush in there and access all the detail in a way that you can get nice crisp lines and coloration on there. Anyway, they're hard to paint and they're kind of tedious to paint those areas. So in future, I'm actually looking at, if I do another unit, which I probably will because you need two, I'm looking at actually just painting the cloak one color and doing some wash treatments and a bit of highlighting to pull that pattern out a little bit, but not a completely different color with highlighting and shading, because it's just tedious. And these are, line troops. These are the guys who are in bulk. What's cool about them, what makes that visual impression on the table, is their flesh tones, their armor, depending on how you treat it, and the cloth. I'd say those three things, and obviously they're giant weapons. But nailing the skin, nailing the armor will go a really long way. You could pretty much just paint the cloth black as long as you nail those two things, and it'd probably still look pretty cool. That said, I did paint my cloth with the patterns and everything, so I will show you how I did that in this video, and you can decide for yourself if you want to replicate that or not. I will also mention that I'm not going to show you how to do the bases in this video, because I actually think there's going to be a use for a tutorial like that can be used even for other models, other games, where I'm going to do effectively like a Caribbean beach type of base, white sand and sort of turquoise water. That video though, because I don't want you to paint your guys and then be like, well, how did you do the bases? I'm going to post that video at the same time that I post this video and link it here. I'm going to get that right someday. That's enough of me talking. Let's go to the paint desk and I'll show you how I did these guys. Alright guys, here's a couple of pictures of the final look we're going for with this unit. Now I'll be painting my unit in assembly line fashion. You can see them here. I've primed them black throughout most, like the bottom and the weapons, and then white for the flesh. And then I'm base coating the flesh. I'm using an airbrush, but you can use a regular brush using GW Warp Fiend Gray. For the weapon, I base coated with Vallejo gunmetal. It's their premium airbrush line. You can use any really gunmetal colored paint, such as Citadel Lead Belcher, and you can hand paint this on as well. Then I airbrushed a highlight of Vallejo Metal Color Silver. Again, you can just hand brush this as well, and you can use any bright metallic, such as like a Runefang steel or anything like that, just on the blade area. For the robes and pants, I airbrushed a base coat of Vallejo Game Air Imperial Blue. Once again, you can hand brush this very easily. Actually, almost all the steps here where I use an airbrush, you can also just use your regular brushes if you don't airbrush. And don't worry about getting the blue on the armor or the boots or anything like that, because we'll be going and painting over those later anyway. While that was drying, I did a wash of 50/50 Drakenhof Nightshade and Lahmian Medium, and just applied that to all of the weapons, using the brush to avoid, to wick up any of the pooling that happens, and just give a very light bluish shade to some of the weapon areas. And then a similar step for the flesh using Druuchi Violet and Lahmian Medium 50/50. Just here you can see the mix just for context, but same thing, just apply it over the flesh and just use your brush to avoid any heavy pooling that happens. To highlight the robes, I started with Imperial blue in my palette and then added some white, in this case P3 morrow white, but you can use any white you like, and just a little bit because white can often go a long way. I think in my case I did add a couple though, because for some reason the Imperial blue was pretty resistant to lightning, which is odd. And then thin it with a bit of water or thinning medium, and then we're just going to apply very light layers to all the raised areas of the robes. And for the pants I did one highlight and then I stopped because I wanted to keep highlighting the robes and make them look lighter than the pants themselves and give a little bit of definition there. Same thing here for another layer, added a bit more morrow white and a little bit of thinning medium to keep it from being too thick when I'm layering it. The pattern on the robe was base coated with UK Prussian blue for Vallejo air, and you can use any of blue-gray, for example P3 Troll Blood flesh I believe, or Troll Blood base would be similar to this color. Then I highlighted using a thinned light gray, in this case wolf gray from Vallejo Model Air. You could use any light gray like an Ulthuan gray, for example, from GW. You want to keep these layers quite thin, and it's a little stark. I mean, you could also just apply some white to that original Prussian blue we were using, and UK Prussian blue, and then use that. So this is more of a doing it to the, choosing the color that you think looks nice, and it's not a hard and fast choice here. You don't have to use this light gray because again it is a pretty strong contrast that might be tricky to blend. And as I said at the start of the video, it was really tedious to paint these designs, and I think for a future unit I would just take a different approach and have them the same color maybe apply some extra highlights and washes instead. I base coated the tassels, the one on the back, the longer one, and then the front one with white, and then in a future step we're going to color those. The base color I used on the neck armor and that thing sticking up out of the back, I don't even know what to call that. I use scale 75 black metal, but you could use lead belcher, you could use any dark metallic that you like. To create an undercolor on the tassels, which we're going to go over with more of an orange, I applied effectively a glaze of yellow ink, Vallejo Game ink, and you could also use, I think, GW's Lamenter's yellow would work as well. When that's dry, go over it with Citadel Fuegan orange, and basically just paint it right out of the pot over top, and you'll see that the yellow we applied previously is coming through as a highlight, creates a nice yellow orangey look rather than just a flat basic orange. For the boots, I base coated them with Rhinox hide. I tried to keep the boots a fairly dark brown. Really, they're brown leather boots that you can paint with any brown you're happy with. There's nothing fancy about this step really. For the gold, I based them with Retributor armor, which includes the hilts of the weapons and the little connectors of the tassels. To highlight the gold, I added a very small amount of P3 Radiant Platinum to the Retributor armor, mixed that up and just applied it as a highlight to the golds. I wouldn't use very much of the Radiant Platinum as it will turn it too pale,
You could also substitute this for things like Liberator Gold, or I think Auric Armor could work as well. Whatever you like to highlight your gold with would be fine. Then I highlighted the neck armor and crest with Runefang steel. Sorry, I know in some of these steps the camera angle is not very good. My apologies, but I think you get the general idea. For the armor plates, I used Scale 75 Emerald Alchemy and Cobalt Alchemy in a 50-50 mix. It creates a very cool, like turquoisey metallic color. I was really looking forward to this step because I knew that that would really start to give the models a little more personality and a little more of that aquatic warrior look. And I was right, it ended up looking really nice. But to be clear, if you can't get your hands on Scale 75 paint, you could just use, you know, a nice silvery colored armor would be fine. You could give it maybe a glaze of Guilliman blue from GW, that blue glaze color, you know, just to make it a little more bluish armor rather than just a flat silver. Then I washed the gold with a custom mix. This looks like Aggrax Earthshade gloss, but I've actually also included, added to that pot about 1/3 Reichland Flesh gloss to create a little bit more of a reddish brown wash. That's what I use on my golds, and I really like how it looks, and the gloss avoids sort of dulling down the gold too much. At this point the armor's dry, and I'm applying a wash of Drakenhof Nightshade and Lahmian Medium 50-50 over it. The Lahmian, I think, helps to prevent it from flattening the metallic too much and taking the shine off. But afterwards, I don't think I filmed it, but I did go in with the original metallic mix and just add a few highlights here and there to bring the shine back out. And, you know, that step I would say is optional, but it definitely would help. For the weapon hilts and the handles of the longer weapons, I used Skaag Brown as a base coat and eventually went over that with an Aggrax Earthshade wash, just regular Aggrax, not gloss. Again, this is a very, very basic step. You can use any brown you like. For the little S-shaped scar in their head, I used Vallejo Game Ink Red and just very carefully painted it into there using a fine tip. Model's almost done. I used Slaanesh Gray as the first flesh highlight with some thinner medium to thin it, because this is the type of color that is going to be fairly thick out of the pot, so you're going to want to thin it and create some nice layers and feathering on the flesh and avoid sort of chunky highlights here. If you're a new painter, highlighting is effectively painting a lighter color over any of the raised areas of the muscles, biceps, you know, the forehead, the top of the head, things like that, to create a light or where the light is hitting more, and then leave the shadows dark. Now we're going into a stretch of the video where I did this probably, I want to say, 2 to 3 layers of highlights, where I'm adding a white to the original Slaanesh Gray and a bit of thinner medium, or well, actually here I use glaze medium, but really you can use thinner, you can use water, anything that'll just keep it from being drying too quickly and creating brush strokes and things like that. I did film these steps, but they are a little repetitive in the sense that each layer I'm just adding a bit more white to the mix and painting that over the last layer while leaving some of that layer showing, so that you're getting a bit of a gradient from the first layer highlight up to a very almost close to white highlight at the end. So yeah, here's highlight number 2 on the skin. And this is highlight number 3 on the skin. And again, I was using a glaze medium. You can thin it with whatever you like. It would probably have pretty much the same effect. You're just trying to keep these layers thin, because the light color and the white would dry very quickly. Certainly a wet palette helps here. I don't use one, but I am going to get one. Somehow I made it that the last step is also the least exciting step. So this is the final highlights on the boots. First with Mournfang brown, thinning it down a little bit with some water or thinning medium, just applying it over the tops of the boots and the tips of the front of the foot and the toes, I think you call those, the back of the boots. You can see the boots go up roughly to the knee. And again, any brown you like to use is fine here. You're just going for dark brown boots. Then a final highlight, an edge highlight, where I added aged white to the Mournfang brown to lighten it. But you could add some bone to your brown. You could use whatever you like to paint brown with, would be just fine. These are the boots that are not exactly the stars of the show on this model. Here's the final unit. Looking pretty cool, if I may say so. If you have questions, please post them below in the comments, and note that the bases are covered in a separate video which I've already posted online, and I will link here in the card in the top right. If you have questions or comments, please post below. I hope you found this useful. I'm really enjoying painting these models, and I'll be painting more Idoneth Deepkin in future videos. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking the video, which helps me grow the channel and continue to produce these tutorials. We'll see you next time.